I think as artists, what really appeals to us about a good city is like the visual component, the design, the architecture.
Yes.
And you can really find like the cultural identity of the people who live there through how they express themselves artistically in.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Reticence Games podcast. I'm Nick.
I'm Alice. Hi.
And we are video game developers as well as lifelong gamers. And in today's episode, we have a really fun one for you guys because we're going to be talking about video game cities and what makes them special. And as game devs, we're going to kind of try to pick them apart and see like what makes a really fun and interesting and unique city. But before I get into that, I do want to mention, if you guys have been watching us, obviously Armand is usually with us, but Alice is one of our amazing artists on our video game Travelers Refrain, and she has flown down from Los Angeles to come hang out with us during Steam Next Fest, which by the time you see this will it will be done, but we probably will still have our video game demo available. And if you guys haven't heard of our game Travelers Refrain, it's about a struggling musician who finds himself in this mysterious forest while he's searching for a way back to his long lost love. And we're building a 2D hand-painted action RPG. So go check that out. Please wishlist if you get the chance. Play the demo, hop in our Discord, and let us know what you think of that. So yeah, let's kind of get into the topic and kind of discuss what do we think makes a cool video game city.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things that go into it, right?
Yeah.
And it can really be like this multi-nuanced thing. And I think as artists, what really appeals to us about a good city is like the visual component, the design, the architecture.
Yes.
And you can really find like the cultural identity of the people who live there through how they express themselves artistically in their buildings and how they choose to decorate them.
Yes.
So like just from first glance at a city, like walking through the gate, you get like a sense of
Like identity.
identity of
Yeah.
the culture that you're about to encounter. And like when we're designing something, I really try to like think about that carefully.
Yeah. Yeah, because we have more of like a concept art sort of background, illustrator background, and we've always been taught to, pull reference. And I
Right.
feel like for us, probably the cities we're drawn to specifically the most have that sort of cultural identity to it. And you can
Absolutely.
tell that the artists that designed that city did their homework, so to speak.
Mhm.
It's always so apparent. And I think that's what's really interesting about video games, because you can go like really crazy fantastical, but I think when people play a game or watch a movie or whatever and they're drawn to something that feels like somewhat familiar to them, even if it's very fantastical, it makes a lot more of like an emotional attachment.
Yeah, a lasting impression from those touchstones that we can recognize in our own world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So beyond just the visual aesthetic stuff, which I think we're probably going to talk about a lot because we're artists, I think there's definitely some like game mechanic-y things that contribute to what makes like a really cool city as well.
Yeah,
So
it has to feel right, not just look right.
Yes, exactly. So on a technical level, I think like, and this has obviously gotten better and better over the years with technology, but a city that feels well lived in, like the people that are in the city like actually like have jobs and responsibilities or doing things, it feels like real people live there.
Yeah, that sense of vibrancy and life from like people going about their everyday lives.
Yes.
Even if there's a disaster happening in the city.
Yeah, it's true.
You don't want to feel like you're in a space that's dead or like that you're just the only one who's like a real person.
Yeah.
Because then it feels like the buildings around you are just made of cardboard.
Yes.
And that it's just a set piece as opposed to a real world.
And it's interesting, too, because I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I definitely know I've played games that have a really beautiful aesthetic, but then they feel kind of lifeless because there's no people in them,
Yeah.
Or not enough people to make it livable. Because I think there's mechanical ways of doing it as well, where you can kind of like block off corridors and make it look like the city's really expansive, but really consolidate the life into a specific pocket of the city.
Yeah, and that's the hallmark of a good designer, good game dev, is when they can kind of trick you into thinking that you're in a really expansive place, even if you are really confined to a small space that just feels quite dense.
Yes, definitely. And I think some of the other mechanical things that contribute to like a fun city is, you know, if it's either a hub zone, like a place you want to keep coming back to like get quests or like, you know, progress the story or whatever. And or like maybe there's mini games there, you know, like someplace you want to just like keep coming back to, or in my opinion, the most fun, memorable types of cities. So I think this is a good point to kind of dive into like some specific examples. So why don't you go for like whatever the first one that comes to mind?
So the first one that came to my mind, which I think is maybe not so much a touchstone for you, but is certainly one for me, and I think for Armand also. Was Stormwind from World of Warcraft.
Okay. I want to look up. I want to have the context in my head.
Yes, absolutely. So I played a lot of World of Warcraft when I was a young teen back in the Stone Age. And like I hopped on like pretty early in World of Warcraft's like life cycle. And they really like with those early cities, like, you know, the main ones like Stormwind, like, oh, what's the Horde main one? Orgrimmar. There's a sense of spectacle when you first come in that just knocks you off your feet.
I can see that. Yeah. So is it like this bridgeway that you kind of have to cross through?
Yeah, there's a little cinematic when you first come in.
Oh, cool.
That is like, oh, like the epicness starts now.
Gotcha.
And you are sort of filled with the like majesty and history of the people who built this place.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it makes you feel like you can't physically walk in there, but you feel like the scale of your character as a like lone person walking up that bridge and like through the big gates underneath these statues, and like with Stormwind, with Undercity, with Orgrimmar, with I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of the Night Elf city, and people are gonna roast me for that later, because I played a Night Elf character, but it felt very grand, and I really liked that. But even after you came through those big gates, there were so many little details further into the city where, like, clearly a lot of love had been poured into making everything feel like if you put in the time to explore further, you could find instances of, like, there are people living here. Yeah. They put a basket of flowers on this windowsill because they wanted to, you know, brighten up their space. Yeah. Or there's a tattered flag on this wall because some warrior came back home and, you know, like this was a battle that they fought ages ago really against the humans, and you know, they wanted to like celebrate their glory. And like as a very imaginative person, I was thinking, you know, what stories are behind all of this? And it, you know, it meant a lot to me as a gamer. How about you? What's something that stood out to you?
So I know we both have a love for some older Zelda games. So Castletown and Ocarina of Time is like, you know, classic. And that's a good example too, I think, of a city that feels very big, even though it's only like a couple like like small areas, right? Because they have the shops, you know, that's the one I think too, where you walk in and like the people are kind of dancing and it's all happy. And then obviously when, you know, I forget what the event is called, when like Ganon like messes everything up, right? And when you go into the future and you're adult Link, it's all like creepy and like there's the weird like undead monsters that are walking around. So
a perfect metaphor for growing up. Everything gets worse.
So that one definitely stood out to me. And I know we have some other Zelda ones that.
Yeah, so we were thinking a little bit before we started recording about like what like games stood out to us, and you had Ocarina of Time, a Castletown, and I had Twilight Princess Castletown.
Yes.
Which
I want to remind myself what that one looks like too,
because I think the visual style in Twilight Princess really kind of paved the way for the modern day Zelda.
Yeah, I agree.
Like especially in the character designs and sort of like it's a little out there in like the color palette, the way that like the characters ornament themselves. And like the NPCs in Castletown are just, they're delightful. They're so like varied, and everyone has like such a different like look to them, and they're
okay.
Yeah. Like, look at that lady's hat.
I know.
It's so, like, voluptuous.
Yeah.
But, like, when you first enter Castletown, it's in the Twilight, like... realm, and you're just experiencing everybody as ghosts.
Interesting.
So...
I haven't played in such a long... And it's like, from my memory, this is my favorite Zelda pre-Breath of the Wild. I just love the aesthetic and, like, the kind of darkness to it.
Yeah.
It was really badass.
It's got an edge to it, for sure.
Definitely.
Which is sort of offset by the, like, brightness and cheer of the colors that they're using.
Yeah.
In the, like, normal light realm.
Yeah.
Which, you know... I think I was 13 when I played that.
Yeah.
I was so into it. I was like, yes, this is my shit.
The fact that he can turn into a wolf, too, is like so sick.
Sick. Lots of fan art was drawn for that game.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, you could spend a really long time just going up and down alleyways in Twilight Princess Castletown and being like, who are you? What's your deal?
Yeah.
Which is, that appeals to me a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then in terms of some other Zelda games, I mean, we briefly talked about Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild had some really cool cities as well. They all felt so distinct and unique and very well designed too. And if anybody hasn't picked up some of those art books that they've done for Breath of the Wild, I think it's called a Legend. I forget what it's called, but I've got it in my room. It's like this thick of concept art. They went ham on that. And because that game also has that, 100-year history of Link like being asleep, they had to think through like, okay, how did the like people back then design things? How are the ruins sort of crumbled? How did they build over top of this? How did society sort of evolve? And I feel like those games are very apparent with that as well. And I think kind of similar to our game, I was looking through a lot of the concept art for that and Tears of the Kingdom. I definitely think they pulled a lot from like Central America, ancient civilizations. So like Aztec, Mayan, that kind of thing. And I just love that. I'm a sucker for that kind of aesthetic, like the gray stone and like the dragon faces and stuff like that. So yeah, I think aesthetically the cities in those games and the people too, they have such physical differences. There's the Zora people and
the
Gerudo
and the Goron, like just badass character designers over there. At Nintendo, the Zelda team, like
the Gerudo is very Middle Eastern inspired as well, and it feels very much like you're walking to a different part of the planet, even though it's like in one sort of continent.
Like I just am so enthralled when a game can really capture the feeling of like disparate cultures in one world. Because Earth has so many different cultures. And like the fact that like a fantasy world obviously would have many different peoples in it. And like you want to imitate that as much as possible because like that's how you make your world feel alive and like really believable.
Yeah, definitely. So I have an example that's almost like counterintuitive to what I was saying before that makes a good town.
Okay.
But one that's just I'm so nostalgic for is Traverse Town in Kingdom Hearts.
Okay.
Have you played any Kingdom Hearts? I forget.
I tried.
Okay.
But I started with 2, which was a very bad idea
yeah,
because I was like,
it's a very confusing story to.
who are these characters?
Yeah.
Why is there ice cream? Why is it salt flavored? I'm lost.
And Kingdom Hearts 2, it literally has like a 2 or 3 hour long intro before you actually like start the real game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very confusing. But anyway, Traverse Town is kind of like the central hub, especially of the first game. It's like the first real place you go to where you meet I think that's where you meet Donald and Goofy, and you meet some of the Final Fantasy characters there and stuff. But it's very much a like dead town. Like there's not a lot going on. But
would it be correct to say that it is a ghost town?
yeah, almost. Yeah.
It's a heartless town.
There's definitely Heartless overrunning the town, but it's weird that there's the only like NPCs are kind of like the Final Fantasy characters. That like one like Sid has like a shop, and there's like the I forget what they're called, Scrooge McDuck's little
Huey,
nephews.
Dewey, and Louie.
Yeah. I think like they're in the town, and Aerith is in the town, and it's a very bizarre area, but I think it contributes to like just the mystery of Kingdom Hearts in the first place.
Kind of the exception that proves the rule, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a kind of strange dimensional town.
Yes.
That doesn't seem to work very well, but it does.
And it's also like a level instead of it being like a real city, let's call it.
I got you.
So it's like it had to be designed to still have like a shop in it, but also the corridors needed to be filled with enemies and stuff like that so that you could run through and complete it. And I think the most nostalgic thing for me, and we didn't really touch on this, but city music specifically.
Yes, yeah.
So Traverse Town has this tune that's just stuck in my head, and it's something that it's one of my favorite video game soundtracks like of all time, and it's just so memorable. And I think it contributes to the like the cozy feeling of that town. You get there and you just feel like warm and cuddly. And then when you fight the Heartless, it kicks on the battle music, which is like super epic.
Is it sort of like a like gentle sort of Western sort of sounding?
Yes.
Yeah. I think I may have made it to Traverse Town in my playthrough, and I was like, this is neat.
Yeah.
So I can even recall that music, even not being a Kingdom Hearts player. So that's how sticky it is.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, okay. Very like good on them for managing that. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. Do you have another one off the top of your head?
I do. Let's see. Should I skip to one of my meteor ones?
Sure.
Okay, so I know that you did not play this series.
Okay.
But it's definitely one of my like ones that it's very close to my heart. Is the city of Bowerstone from Fable.
Okay. I want to look that.
And Fable like takes place in the same country over like 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
And Bowerstone is the capital, and it is like constantly evolving over.
You love these like Lord of the Rings looking cities.
I do. I really do.
I'm seeing a trend.
Well, Bowerstone is very like, traditional English. They've got a lot of Tudor style buildings. It's pretty like, I don't know if you would call it cottagecore, but it's pretty friendly looking.
Yeah. Honestly,
at least in the first game, it definitely evolves.
Gotcha. Honestly, Traverse Town kind of has a similar.
It's got a similar
look to
vibe.
it too.
Yeah.
So. What did you feel like was really special about that town besides like the aesthetic?
Well, the entire Fable series has a kind of quirky sense of humor. It's very cheeky.
Okay.
And the NPCs that populate Bowerstone are like very goofy.
Okay.
Not in a way that's annoying, because it can really get to that point if like the game writers are like, oh, we're so quirky. But I think Lionshead Studios, I think is who originally created Fable. They managed to hit a certain tone that feels like quite warm and engaging with their NPCs.
I don't know why, but I feel like growing up, I always thought it was a really serious game. But then as I got older, I realized I feel like it's kind of a silly fantasy game, right?
Yes, it is. It's got kind of a like very English sense of humor, or at least they might be kind of poking fun at
Sure.
Englishness.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a like traditional hero tale
Got it.
that
Okay.
is like poking fun at hero tales.
I see.
Yeah. Um and there's kind of a progression of like English history sort of that's being lampooned, because like in the second game it's like 500 years after the first game, so there's a little bit of industrial stuff happening in the second one, and then in the
Gotcha.
third one it's like
Cool.
high monarchy kind of stuff, and people are kind of iffy about the quality of the third game. I believe I enjoyed all of them, but then again I was like definitely a kid and teenager as I was playing them, so I wasn't like high critic.
Sure.
But there's Bowerstone is a city with a lot of heart, and there was so much nostalgia for me coming back from playing 1 to 2 to 3 and being like, it's so different now. Look at all the changes.
That's
and
really
like,
cool, though.
I'm here again. I love this.
Yeah.
It felt like a homecoming.
Yeah, I'm trying to even think if there's another series I've played where they've done something like that. I mean, I guess, in Kingdom Hearts Traverse Town, you keep coming back to that.
Yes.
But it's kind of the samey. It's just like it evolves as the graphics evolved and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this actually reminded me, I didn't have this on my list originally, but it did make me think, did you ever play, you didn't have a PS3 though, ever, right?
Never. No.
Okay. There was a game called Folklore. Have you ever heard of that? That is so up your alley. It's not even funny. It takes place, I think, I should just look it up so I don't. Where does Folklore game take place? Doolin, in the real world, set in small seaside Irish village of Doolin. So, okay. So what's really cool about this game is there's two different protagonists. There's a girl that is trying to, I believe, find her lost mother. And then this guy is a magazine writer, and he's writing about the occult. So they both end up in this little seaside town called Doolin, and you switch between the two characters' stories. I never beat this game, and I really want to beat this game.
Yeah.
But it was so intriguing because it's very much like whimsical, like fairies and ghouls and imps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're in this kind of weird town that's like overrun by these like weird creatures.
Look at that guy.
And then you go into these like fairy realms, and I played it a while ago, so I'm not remembering it exactly. If anybody in the comments has played this, like, let me know what you think of this game, because it's one of those games that I think of randomly, and I'm like, man, I want to like go back to this and play it. But like, this is like the aesthetic, and this was PS3 era, and it just was so beautiful and weird and intriguing. But it had this really cool mechanic because, you know, at the time everybody wanted to do motion controls.
Yes.
And this was actually kind of cool. You'd like have to beat down the enemies and then like hold the triggers and like yank the controller up, and it would basically suck out the enemy's like spirit, and then you got to like use their powers.
Oh, cool.
It was really, really cool.
Like Gato style from Jujutsu Kaisen.
I never seen that.
What?
Okay. I know that that's,
you have to put it on your list.
It is on my list.
Yes.
It looks really cool, but
Okay.
I never watched it.
Commenters.
Yeah.
Get on him.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a really cool one. It has that very like, you know, that kind of vibe.
Yes, yeah, I'm totally down. That's going on my list.
Yeah.
But back to cities anyway.
Yeah. So, okay, another one that I think we should talk about is Witcher 3, because that has some of the best cities in all of gaming, I think. I think those cities just feel so absolutely lived in and realistic. And of course, too, like they are pulling a lot of that like Slavic inspiration. So they knew what they wanted their cities to look like.
Yeah.
And I like that there's a lot of variety in that world, but it still is kind of like, because that's also on a continent, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you're not going crazy like here's the Middle East and then here's Africa or whatever. It's kind of all very much like Slavic inspired, but you have like the sea town of Skellige, you have like the really, I don't want to call it industrial, but like the town where like all the banks and stuff
Yeah,
are.
it's a mercantile hub.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's Novigrad.
Novigrad.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then I specifically remember we talked about this off air, but I played Blood and Wine, and that one is just it's beautiful because I
Yeah.
think a lot of the main Witcher 3 cities are kind of dreary almost.
They are. They feel very like this is what the medieval era is like.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I believe it's called Beauclair, and let me show you some images. But it very much feels like Italian inspired.
Is it
So
Italian
there's like
or is it French?
I think it's Italian because there's like vineyards and stuff like that.
Well,
I
they
know
have
there's
those in France.
I know. We could say Beauclair town inspiration.
Ah, yeah.
Witcher 3, I guess. See if we can find the answer to this. Built on top of an ancient elven city, and it's tropical, vibrant, and cheerful. Humans took over. Okay.
Oh, it's tropical.
I wouldn't say it's tropical, honestly.
Mannerist architecture.
What is that?
Mannerist architecture would be high Renaissance era.
Yeah.
Mannerism is like very elongated proportions and kind of like taking the drama of the Renaissance to the next level.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. It would turn to Reddit, right?
Yeah.
There's a picture. Gothic style and more specifically flamboyant Gothic style, which is out of control branch style.
The Church of Saint Maclou in Rouen, France, is a good example.
Okay, French.
France.
Okay. I guess that makes sense with the name as well, right? It sounds very French.
Yeah.
But let me pull up some images for you because it's like I remember, especially coming from the dark gray world, going into this like vibrant city with these like blue walls and orange walls, and everybody was like, merchants, and they were like selling fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. It was a very beautiful.
I want to go to there.
I know, that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And I love walking through towns like that where it feels like, oh man, I wish this was like real and I could be in this town. But it was huge too. It was a huge city. Especially for a DLC. I mean, I think the DLCs in this game were like 30 hours long. It was crazy.
Oh, maybe I need to go back and beat the entire game.
I think you probably do.
Who needs sleep?
Yeah, who needs sleep? But yeah, I specifically remember this one. And yeah, and you know what was another, it was kind of like a in between a town and a city, but do you remember the quest line with the Baron?
Yes.
Yeah. That one really stood out to me too, because wasn't it kind of like you had to spiral up to get to the top?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I remember the sort of interaction between the people and that, not so much the like setting, but yeah.
Yeah, that one was interesting too, because it very much felt like there was kind of like the lower class people on the bottom. There's like sheep running around and farmers and stuff like that. And then as you kind of got up to the top, it felt like there was more money. So they definitely like in such a small setting sold that concept.
Right.
And I think from what I remember, it was like one of those storylines where the Baron was like screwing everybody over, sort of thing.
Yes.
And the town itself was very representative of the quest line that you were going to be running through. And you were in that city, I think, for like 5 hours kind of doing stuff.
Yeah.
So that's also really cool when it's like the city revolves around the specific main quest of the area.
Yeah. And in doing the quest line, you get to experience a lot of different aspects of the city. And specifically in The Witcher, I mean, you are experiencing both the highest rungs of society and the lowest.
Yes.
And you are interacting with people in all tiers and seeing, how people in this world live. And the consequences of how they live.
Yes.
Which that is just fascinating, and like the evidence of the careful and thoughtful world building on behalf of the game creators, which is so great.
Yeah. So I think maybe we can just kind of quickly dive into some of the cities we're building in our game, because we've been having to think through a lot of this stuff as we've been developing, and it's very interesting to develop a city because not only are you having to think about like the jobs of the citizens, but also how that city plays into the overarching narrative.
Right.
Because a lot of these open world games, you can kind of like be like, okay, this region is based on this and the plot's going to sort of go here. But because our game, we're building a small indie game, we have to be very concise with what we're building and very practical. So I'm going to try my best not to spoil stuff because our game is not out yet. But we do have we have a city and then we have like 2 towns, I guess let's call it.
Yeah.
And we specifically developed them that there's a backstory that is, they're kind of all contributing to each other in some way. Mm-hmm. And the first town you go to is overrun by robots because we've got robots in our forest. And that's been really fun because that was another example of we have a specific storyline that the character is going in there for a reason to sort of like get through that part of the plot. So I can kind of just like very briefly preface, you find this robot that's really wounded, and Traveler, our main character, is kind of on his quest to defeat the Fates, but he sort of gets sidetracked and feels bad for this robot because he's like, oh, you need to tell my people that, our energy reserves are low. Go tell my wife that I'm injured, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So Traveler starts to take pity on him and goes to this town to sort of resolve that. And then he finds, this own like conflict happening within the town itself. So,
yeah, a love story definitely appeals to Traveler.
Yes.
That region is one of my favorites, mostly because I worked on it a lot.
Yeah.
But I think when we were working on it really intensely, we had kind of a puzzle because as a smaller game, we don't have how do I phrase this? Every
capacity.
Asset needs to serve like multiple purposes.
Yeah.
So the challenge is, how do we create things that are good storytelling, world building pieces to decorate our environments with and make the player feel like this space is really lived in, aesthetically beautiful, and helps to tell the story, because you don't want anything that's extraneous.
Yeah.
But also can serve multiple purposes. Because having a sort of one-off asset or piece of art is a little bit of a waste.
Unless it's like for a set piece or something.
Unless it's like a very dramatic thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And in building these towns and cities, you've got to be like so deliberate and thoughtful. And I feel like we rose to the challenge very well. And we managed to build some really gorgeous and what's
diverse.
The word? Diverse, but also deep.
Oh yeah.
Like these the story feels deep in these areas.
Yes. I mean, it's like if we're going to go out of our way to build a city, we needed to pack as much into it so that the player is spending time in there and kind of like getting to interact, and all of the characters, even if they only have a couple lines, are kind of significant to the overarching plot line. We don't really have... I honestly don't think there's a single NPC in that whole town that's not worth talking to, because they all kind of contribute to that plot line in some way. And as Alice was saying, some of the strategies we used as artists and indie devs was creating modular assets. So that means like building houses. We couldn't build 50 different kinds of houses, but if we built 50 different pieces to make a house, you can make like almost unlimited amounts of houses from those pieces. So you're kind of like using a round window here and a square window here and a round edge here and a square edge here to like kit bash together to make some like unique structures.
Like Lego. It's fun.
it actually is really fun. I like piecing stuff together.
Yeah.
And
you get to design with the stuff you already designed.
Yes.
It's like another layer to the process that's like really enjoyable still.
Yeah. And I think some of the more unique assets we had to make for that area, the one that's coming off the top of my head is we have like a little chef robot in there. So we made a little sign that's like you can get your like, Verve stew, and that's on the outside of his house. That was kind of cute. And then design wise, the way that we kind of mapped out the level was also kind of intentional and interesting. And it's kind of like a traditional fantasy town in a way that there's like a town elder. So we were like, okay, we know we're going to have this guy that you're going to talk to that's going to sort of prepare you for this quest. And that's how we started building the area. We're like, okay, we know you need to get to him first. And that's going to kind of unlock all these other pieces to the story. So we were like, okay, he's got to be high up. He's got to be apparent in this level. And we have trees is like, obviously we're in a forest, but we have these giant trees that are kind of a big energy source for the forest. So we're like, okay, let's slap one of those really big trees right center so you know to go there. And then it also kind of frames the level in a way where you kind of run up these stairs and you're able to go and talk to the elder in this big tree. And then you can come back down the stairs and sort of explore in different directions to meet the other characters. So
it flows very nicely.
Yeah. We've been learning a lot about having the character kind of traverse around and making sure that we're pathing them in a way that doesn't feel like they're redundantly walking a whole bunch. So making more circular kind of areas has been very helpful. And even in these really complicated games like The Witcher, you'll notice too that they purposefully open up hallways and pathways so that you can sort of loop back around, but the designers develop them in a way to get you on a certain path, and then you realize later, like, oh, if I want to go back to the main hub, I just go down this alleyway to take a shortcut. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize how much they're being influenced by the art and sort of set design in a game,
and lighting too.
Yes, color and light is a great guiding tool that artists use to like help you along when you're playing one of these from like the smallest indie game to the biggest AAA game. Like you might be like, oh man, where am I supposed to go next? And then suddenly the clouds will shift on the horizon and you'll see a giant tower outlined. And be like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And, like I love learning about that stuff, and I love noticing when it's in a game. So next time you're playing something, just like check it out, and you'll be surprised how much you're just subconsciously guided by these things.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a tangent, but how do you feel about games where you like climb when there's like the white paint or the yellow paint on the cliff edge?
Oh, very good question. Okay. So I hate it when it feels anachronous.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in a city and like you're climbing around it, and it's like, who went around and tagged all of these like handholds with like graffiti? I guess like some rogue gang member was like, we're gonna outline everywhere so that our guys can like climb around that. But like that would take a long time.
I know.
When it's more natural, like it looks like the stone has been worn away or something, and so like it's been like chipped a little bit and it looks like lighter, or it's catching the light a little bit more, I'm more down for it. But if it's like some poor person had to go around and like carefully paint a like textured swipe across something so that like Ezio will know to put his little paw there. I'm not that. No.
I know. I've seen kind of a cross between that. I forget if it's Horizon Zero Dawn. Maybe they've done it in both games. I think Horizon Zero Dawn or the new Tomb Raider games, where it's like at the very least, even though it's like painted, there will be like a little like a stake in there and then like rope hanging, so it looks like somebody else had at least climbed that way before. It's still kind of silly, but I don't know, it's always something that I find hilarious too, because it's like you don't really need it, especially if there's a very specific way to even walk. Like I will say in some Assassin's Creed games they do it well, because you're kind of climbing on buildings, and it's like some of the handholds are a different color, but it looks like it's an architectural decision as opposed to like somebody painted on a cliffside.
Right.
So But that's another thing maybe I want to talk about is the Assassin's Creed series, because that goes back to what we were originally talking about with all the research and the cultures, because obviously they're pulling real cities and having to make them feel like, believable.
Yes. How they were during the time period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is definitely some range to these cities, because I think the most realistic one from my personal experience being in the city, like in modern day, is Florence from Assassin's Creed 2, or the Assassin's Creed 2 series. And I remember, because I obviously played Assassin's Creed 2 before I studied abroad, and Alice and I studied abroad in the same art school in Florence when we were in college, and we didn't know that till later, which is so freaking funny.
Shout out Sachi.
Yeah. But yeah, that was so cool, because I remember going to Florence after having played the game, and it's like I knew exactly where I was in the city. It was wild. Like,
you could have climbed up the inside of the Duomo if you needed to.
Yeah, and not gonna lie, we had an apartment that was literally like a dual story, and there was a little like rooftop terrace.
Yeah.
And one night, me and my friends climbed around on the tops of the
all those Ezio skills.
We had to do it, because it's literally like that. You can just like parkour your way across the rooftops of the city. It's pretty cool.
Those beautiful lumpy buildings.
Yeah,
so many handholds.
But yeah, the Florence city was like absolutely beautiful. Florence in general is just like one of the coolest cities I've ever been in. Yeah.
Firenze, I miss you.
So that one particularly was really, really cool. I mean, I liked all of them, but some of the ones that stood out to me was going to New York City in Assassin's Creed 3, because again, like I've been multiple times. I have family in New York, so I've been to like the city as it is today.
Yeah.
But going to see it in a game where it was still like horse and carriage and like dirt roads and there was no skyscrapers.
Yeah.
It's just wild. It really did put me back in time and made me really appreciate like, I don't know, just like how civilization has grown. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And we can watch movies, read books about these places back in the day, but that's the beauty of video games. You can feel as you are moving around this space like a little piece of what it was like to be there.
Yeah, and especially because I know for a fact that the designers literally will look at like old maps from the time.
Yeah.
And obviously they can't create one-to-one scales, but like they had the road names and like the pathways for the big structures and stuff like that. So you can literally feel like you're actually running through the place, which was sick.
Yeah.
And then I just want to shout out two other ones. Going to ancient Egypt, I don't like specifically remember the different cities that you were in, but just Assassin's Creed Origins, like all of the cities were just so cool to run around in.
Yeah.
And then the one that was funny to me though is Assassin's Creed Odyssey, because that's the one that takes place in Greece. And I'm Greek and I've been to Greece many, many times. So I know exactly what Greece looks like. And I will say in terms of pathing, like going up to the Parthenon, like that felt like I knew exactly where I was going in the game.
Yeah, it's a hike, right?
Yeah,
you really have to haul ass
hike
to get up to there.
And it's really cool to run around and be like, oh, I know where that what is it called? Like the theater is, and I know where this like amphitheater, and I know where this structure is, and blah blah blah. But I will say they took such hardcore artistic liberties on the Flora and Fauna?
Flora and Fauna.
Flora and Fauna.
Yeah.
Because Greece is very, very dry, and they made Greece look like it was like Mexico, like very tropical plants and stuff. So I get for a video game they wanted to make it look beautiful, but yeah, that was really interesting.
Oh, maybe the climate's changed since then. Who knows?
Maybe, but it's like really like overgrown.
Yeah. They had a lot of rain back then. Who knows?
Yeah, possibly.
It was just a wet season.
Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, that's obviously a really cool franchise to run around and explore the cities.
Do we want to talk about our number one?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, cool.
You can go first.
All right. So as is typical for this particular channel, I'm going to talk about one from the Final Fantasy
Oh,
series.
really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is a game that is very familiar to me, but you have not explored it as much. I'm going to talk about the Crystarium from Final Fantasy XIV,
Okay.
which is the only Final Fantasy game that I'm really familiar with, unfortunately.
Wait, was that in A Realm Reborn?
It was not. That's why you don't know
Oh,
it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's from the Shadowbringers expansion pack.
Oh, okay.
It's the hub city from Shadowbringers.
Okay.
And it is like, okay, I'm just gonna say all of the cities in Final Fantasy XIV are beautiful, stunning. Just gonna shout out Ishgard as one of my favorites, like high Gothic, like monuments of stone, like so cool.
Okay, I can see why this is your favorite. Yeah, this is beautiful.
Kugane in Hingashi, so pretty, like towering Japanese castle-like structures, so cool. But the Crystarium, I was just blown away because I had never seen such a beautiful melding of like kind of Romanesque shapes with almost Art Nouveau, like more organicness. And when I first arrived there, like, you know, new expansion pack, very exciting, like just hit the level cap. I was like, you know, about to run around and explore all the things. But I couldn't get started on the main quest because I was like, I need to go and look at everything in this city. It was so like beautifully done.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think like Final Fantasy in general has a very like strong pedigree for making beautiful things.
Yeah.
Beautiful characters, beautiful environments, but like I just want to highlight that the architecture and cities are some of the most gorgeous I've ever seen in video game design.
Yeah.
And the Crystarium especially, like I found that very original and very cool. And I wanted to spend like so much time there, and I don't spend all that much time there now because, you know, it's a past expansion pack, but like it was a special moment. And I think like the more special moments you can create for your audience, the better, because those are the ones with staying power.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think my number one has a very similar feel, and it's funny because of course mine's going to be from a Final Fantasy game as well. So mine is actually a very new one. It's Calm from Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So it's the one that I showed you the other day.
Yeah.
So what stood out to me so much about that city is so you kind of play a little intro when you first start up that game, but Calm is a very nostalgic city in that world, specifically because that's where the backstory gets told. It's kind of like you're in Midgar, this big rusty, you know, messed up sort of metallic city where it's like kind of dark because there's like this big plate that's covering all of the people below. And then Calm is the first city you explore when you get outside of Midgar. And Cloud and company sit down and they're all like, Cloud, what the heck is going on? And he like kind of tells them like a little bit of the backstory leading up to who Sephiroth is and stuff like that. And so you go through that intro and then you finally get to explore Calm. And especially in Rebirth, it was just like, you know how I said Traverse Town was like really meaningful to me just because I have a lot of nostalgia for the look and the soundtrack. Calm felt the same way. When I played that game, it was, again, it's one of those soundtracks that's just stuck in my head. It was a remastered modern version of the original FF7 one. It had all of the, you know, there's like a windmill there and there's like, I think like a clock tower and stuff like that. And it has that very Tetsuya Nomura kind of wacky vibe. And it was very interesting, especially in the new game, because none of the other cities had that kind of like whimsical nature to them that this did. And it almost feels out of place, but it's in place at the same time. And what I love so much about it is, like I said, you come out of Midgar, which is very metallic, and then you go to Calm, and then you go to the beautiful big green open world. But Calm feels like this melding between the two. There's still some of the structure because there's the city folk that come in that are influencing it, but then there's the farmers and stuff that bring all their produce. So you see a meld of like people in suits and then farmers running around and, merchants and stuff like that. And I was showing you too. I've never played a game where there's just people like doing yoga outside or like dancing and there's people playing cards. It felt like a real place. And it was definitely another example of like, it felt way bigger than it actually is.
Yes.
But I remember first getting in there, and I'm not the kind of person to just like wander around and just like look at stuff in games. I'm kind of like more to the point.
That would be me.
Yeah. But I literally just wanted to explore every nook and cranny and just see all of the detail that was in that game. It was beautiful. So that's definitely my number one.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to play that.
Yeah, I think you'll love it.
Get on it.
Yeah. So, maybe we could do a couple like honorable mentions because we still have a couple on our list.
Yeah. Let's see. I didn't mention Orlais from Dragon Age.
Yeah. I want to look that one up again because I kind of remember it. But,
absolutely. Yeah. So we were thinking about how lively a city can feel, right? And Orlais is like it's very visually appealing. There isn't a lot of space to run around in, but they stuffed that city full of interactions that you can kind of overhear or even partake in.
Mm-hmm.
And like little like moments or events that you can pick up like extraneous story from.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a huge Dragon Age fan. I've been
Dragon Age.
Yeah. And it's relevant because they just put out the new trailer for Veilguard.
Yeah.
Which, I'm thinking like, but I was very excited to see Orlais in Inquisition, and I feel like it really delivered because it felt like we got so much information about this people from the way that the NPCs dress to the like decoration in the way that
was that kind of like Venice inspired because of the like masks.
France.
Yeah, it's France too. Man,
you keep thinking
I've never
Italy,
been. I
France.
don't know a lot of French history, and I've never been to France, so it's like my context is more Italian.
It's got kind of a Versailles vibe.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like there could be some Venetian stuff with the masks and the masquerade, but I would say it's more sort of like the French like Rococo.
Got it. Okay.
Baroque
stuff.
And I think like just the ambient storytelling there was really top notch.
Yeah, I agree. That was one city I specifically remember in that game, and I'm kind of hazy on that game. Played that a while ago, but that game was really fun. Another one I want to mention, and we kind of talked a little bit about this off air, because I'm kind of like, is this really like a video game city? Because there's not really like NPCs and stuff, but Yharnam from Bloodborne is just like, it's so cool. It is so very cool. It's like an infinite city of Gothic cathedrals, essentially. Like, I've never been in anything else like it.
Yeah.
And I love that style. Like, I love Castlevania games, and it feels like you're just in a Castlevania world for like hours and hours.
Yeah, no, I could definitely argue that like it's a city. One could say, in fact, that it is the fifth character in Bloodborne.
Yeah, for real. Oh my god.
That was the stupidest joke I've ever made. No, but like Yharnam it has such an identity.
Yeah.
And it is like, because you are so in it, except when you like escape to the Hunter's Dream, but like it's a little oppressive.
Yeah.
How
and I guess like the NPCs are the enemies, right? Because it's
except
kind
for
of
like the people who are hiding and you talk to them like occasionally.
That's true too. Yeah, I guess there are kind of people that actually you can talk to. I kind of forgot. But like even the people that like are crazy in there are people that like have turned into these monsters from the city.
They used to live there. They used to be real people.
Yeah. I love that world. It's so cool.
Very sick. Very cool.
Okay, and then a couple others I had. So again, I can't like think of the names of any of these cities off the top of my head, but I specifically remember Dragon Quest XI. It's a huge game, so you go to a ton of different places.
Never played it.
Oh man, that's another one. It's like
Our
I
gaming
just feel-
history is so different.
I know it's funny too because I feel like all these games I'm talking about, you would just like be obsessed with them too.
But did you ever play the Hamtaro games on Game Boy?
No, I did not. I watched Hamtaro on Cartoon Network, but yeah, the cities in Dragon Quest XI were just like very beautiful, very like kind of medieval fantasy, like Square Enix kind of looking cities, but
Love that Squeenix.
but they were there was always really cool plot lines that happened. There was really interesting NPCs, a lot of interaction, and obviously they were like the places you go to like upgrade your equipment and stuff.
Yeah.
I guess that's something we didn't really touch on too much, but like that's another really important part, especially in RPGs, about cities. It's like you go to the city to get your new weapons.
Yeah. We
You know?
were talking about like look and feel.
Yeah.
Because that's what, like, I don't know. It's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
But like mechanic wise, yeah, you need a hub zone where you can do all your stuff for the thing in the game and the playing of it.
Yeah. And then the last one I wanted to mention as well, I know there's like different pockets of this, but just all of Tokyo in Persona 5 just felt so alive, and it felt like each district had its own identity. And I've never been to Japan, but obviously from just watching anime and stuff, you kind of get the gist of the culture and the people and stuff like that. And it felt very true, if not obviously exaggerated, but that's kind of the point of the whole game is it's like everybody's emotions are like totally on like 10 times what they're supposed to be. But I loved just running through that world as well. And it felt like even though I'd never been to Japan, I feel like if I go to Japan now, I'll get it because I played Persona.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like with Assassin's Creed. So yeah, that was another one. Oh, and I have one last one. So
okay.
So Altissa and FF15. I want to show you this.
Okay, sure.
I feel like this is going to be one, if you ever play this game, you're going to be like, oh, maybe this is my new favorite. Because it's just like absolutely beautiful. And I will say like, this game, people are kind of hit or miss, but you literally like, this is the first time you're kind of leaving the continent and you literally travel on a boat to get into the city. And there's like a waterway to get into it by boat. And then it's very Venice inspired. So there's like, this is actually Italian. This one I didn't mess up because there's like,
yes, I agree with you on this one.
Yeah, it's literally a city on the water. There's like gondolas and stuff like that. There's like really beautiful shops. There's a lot of like clothing shops in there with.
Ooh, customization.
It's more just like you can window shop, but you can see all of the like beautiful dresses and stuff like that. But this is one of those cities in a video game that I've never been to a city in a video game like this before.
Yeah.
Because it was just so pristine, and this is like the epitome of a Final Fantasy city, because it's just like they went ham on the architecture, They're like every street is just going to be beautiful. So
man, I like what I would give to be one of the artists designing that.
Oh my god, I know. Although this would be so stressful to design. Like holy moly.
Okay, I would love to do the sketches and then hand it off to somebody else to
that
render
can render it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Oh man. So yeah, do you have any more?
I think we've exhausted my list. I mean, I could go on and on about everything I've ever played.
Yeah. But I think that was a good little selection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fun one. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Remember that we do have our video game demo out for Traveler's Refrain on Steam now, so please play the demo, wishlist, come hang out with us in the Discord as well, and let us know what you think about the podcast as well as the game. But yeah, until next time, we will see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.